bring in Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who represents the 3rd District of Ohio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So how would you like to see law enforcement handle this moment in Ohio and around the country?
I think we need to take a look at looking at the protocols. Certainly, we have all had a lot of lessons learned, that there is a difference when people are protesting peacefully and when officers come in strike force and riot mode. And I think there are two different approaches and attitudes. America has been watching us when we have seen what happened with George Floyd, or whether it was Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor, or many of the people right here in Columbus, Ohio. So hopefully we would look at different training, different processes. Maybe we also need to look at, which I believe, a citizen's review. I grew up in an era time when the officers lived in the community, so they knew the people and the people knew them. That's no longer the case in many places, so there is not that ownership and accountability. It's one mode, one strategy, and we have to break that cycle, because for too long, too many individuals, and especially African-American men and women, are dying senselessly.
What do you think of President Trump's language about, quote, domination, and his dispersing of crowds last night in Washington, D.C. so that he could take a picture in front of a church?
Oh, I think it's just horrible when the nation is on fire and you have the person who should be the commander-in-chief fanning the fire. It's just awful, but however, sad to say, not surprising.
While thousands are taking to the streets in peaceful protest, we're also seeing some violence and looting. How do you think that authorities should separate the bad actors from everyone else? And what's an acceptable use of force when people start to destroy things?
Well, I think you just said it best. I think you do have to separate those who are protesting peacefully, those who are abiding by all of the rules of the permits that they took out. And I think those who are tearing up cities and ruining small businesses and offices and defacing government or other buildings, I think you treat them drastically different. Certainly, none of us condone burnings and tearing up. We are in an unusual new normal in our country. Beyond this, we're in the middle of COVID-19. So we have to do a lot of things differently. This time last year, I wasn't wearing a mask and gloves when I went out. I wasn't voting on the House floor by alphabet and one person at a time. So police officers are no different than you or I. You have to change when change is needed.
If you were to have the president's ear, what change would you tell him we need to act on immediately? What would you advise him in this moment?
He needs to change his whole attitude and his whole governing strategy. That's a very difficult question for me to say a what if to someone who has never demonstrated that he wants to listen, or that he's reasonable, or that he has the sense or the command of what it takes to be a president. This would not be the first time that we have not sent letters, that we have not published what a president should want to do. I don't think he cares. I don't think he would listen. This is the same man that has made so many racial statements. When you're looting comes the shooting. When Puerto Ricans were devastated, he threw them rolls of paper towels. When athletes were kneeling, he called them SOBs, or the sons of that. Pick a topic. He went across the street to take a photo op with a Bible, and yet people were harmed who were protesting peacefully. And the list goes on with the number of things. So I can't tell you what I think I could even say that he would listen to or that he would do it. He runs this wonderful America through Twitter. That within itself tells you something. The same man that said that the coronavirus was a hoax, the same man that told people to take Clorox or Lysol tablets for it. Really? That's what we have as a commander-in-chief.
You were in Columbus on Saturday when you experienced firsthand being hit with pepper spray by authorities. Was the use of force where you were appropriate?
I think for what happened at that station and where I was in a peaceful protest was unnecessary, and I think it was too much force needed. Pepper spray certainly is not directional. While it was not directed directly in my face, if you are 6, 8, or 10 inches away from where it's directed in someone else's face, you all feel it.
How does this nation come together in this moment and begin to heal?
I think this nation comes together by bringing all of us together. At some point, we have to figure out what the change is. And that doesn't mean another white paper or task force or one of those things that we have repeatedly done. This is not new. Racism is still alive. People still are full of hatred. Much of that is because we have not had change. This is something that has been bred in the disparities for Black and brown people, whether you look at the wealth gap and the economic inequalities, whether you look at housing, education, mass incarceration, the list goes on. And now even with COVID-19, across the nation, more African Americans are dying from this. Then let's look at our health care. African Americans don't always at every level have a primary physician because they are underinsured or uninsured, or they don't have health care. So this is a systemic thing. So if we all in our respective areas make a commitment to be intentional about moving the needle away from discriminating, away from racial overtones, then that is at least the first step.
Congresswoman Beatty, we thank you so much for your time.